The morning sun cast golden shadows across Puerta del Sol as Elena Vega arranged her flowers with practiced hands. At 52, her fingers moved with the efficiency of someone who'd spent 3 decades in the same spot, the same worn cobblestones beneath her feet. The Casa de Correos clock struck 7, and already the square was filling with the rhythmic clatter of carriage wheels and the distant hum of Madrid's first electric trams. She touched the white roses tenderly, remembering when Sophia was small enough to hide behind her skirts, giggling as she handed flowers to customers. That little girl with dirt under her fingernails and jasmine petals in her hair seemed like a dream now. The woman her daughter had become was someone Elena barely recognized. "Good morning, Signora Vega." Don Alberto, the newspaper vendor, tipped his cap as he passed. "Your flowers are beautiful as always." Elena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. In 3 days, Sophia would marry Rodrigo Alcantara in the gardens of the royal palace, and Elena had been told, in no uncertain terms by her own daughter, that she should not attend. The memory of that conversation still burned like acid in her chest. They'd been in Park del Retiro, on one of the iron benches where they used to feed the ducks when Sophia was young. The Palacio de Cristal gleamed in the distance, and the autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet. "Mother, you have to understand," Sophia had said, her voice tight with something between desperation and cruelty. "The Alcantaras are one of the oldest families in Spain. They trace their lineage back to the Reconquista. If they knew I was the daughter of a street vendor, ... double quotes, a flower seller," Elena had corrected quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "I'm a flower seller, Sophia Letters. The same flower seller who worked 16-hour days so you could attend the Academia de Santa Isabel. The same one who sold my mother's wedding ring so you could have piano lessons." Sophia's jaw had tightened. "I know what you've done, but this is about my future. Our future. Once I'm married to Rodrigo, once I'm part of that family, I can help you. I can set you up with a proper shop, maybe in a better neighborhood. But right now, if they discover the truth..." "The truth," Elena had repeated, tasting the bitterness of the word. "The truth that you're my daughter. Mother, please." Sophia's eyes had flickered with something, guilt, perhaps, or fear. "Just for the wedding day. Stay away. After that, when everything is settled, we can figure things out." Now, 3 days later, Elena stood among her roses and carnations, watching the wealthy matrons of Madrid pass by without a glance. She thought about the worn blue dress hanging in her tiny room in Lavapiés, the one she'd planned to wear. She'd even found a small hat with a silk flower to match. Foolish dreams. The morning wore on. She sold flowers to young lovers, to gentlemen buying bouquets for their wives, to servants running errands for their wealthy employers. Each transaction was mechanical, her mind elsewhere. Around noon, as the sun climbed high and hot above the terracotta rooftops, a black carriage pulled up near her stand. Elena's heart seized. She knew that carriage, the Alcantara family crest, gleamed in gold on its door. But it wasn't Sophia who emerged. It was Rodrigo himself, tall and elegant, in a charcoal suit, his dark hair perfectly oiled beneath his hat. He approached her flower stand with the careful politeness of someone accustomed to navigating social minefields. "Signora Vega." His voice was gentle. Elena straightened, her calloused hands suddenly self-conscious. "Say no Alcantara, please. Call me Rodrigo." He smiled, and she could see why Sophia had fallen for him. There was genuine warmth there, not just aristocratic charm. I wanted to speak with you before the wedding. Elena's throat tightened. If Sophia sent you to, she doesn't know I'm here. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. May we speak somewhere more private? They walked to a quiet corner of Plaza Mayor, where the morning flower market was winding down. The red facades of the buildings seemed to close in around them, centuries of history watching their conversation. Rodrigo purchased 2 cups of coffee from a street vendor, pressing one into Elena's hands, despite her protests. I know what Sophia told you, he said finally, his eyes meeting hers. About not coming to the wedding. Elena said nothing, staring into her coffee. I want you to know that I disagree with her decision, profoundly. He paused, choosing his words carefully. My mother, Donna Isabel, she's ... traditional. Some might say rigid. She has certain expectations about bloodlines and social standing. Sophia is terrified of disappointing her. And what about disappointing me? The words escaped before Elena could stop them. I'm her mother, Rodrigo. I raised her alone after her father died. She was 6 years old. Do you know what it's like to watch your child cry for a parent who will never come home while you're trying to figure out how to keep food on the table? Rodrigo's expression softened with genuine sympathy. I can't imagine. I worked through fevers, through winter storms, through days when my hands were so raw they bled. I did it so she could have better, so she could be better. And now, ... Elena's voice cracked. Now she's ashamed of me. She's not ashamed, Rodrigo said quietly. She's afraid. There's a difference, though I'm not sure it's any better. He set down his coffee cup. Please come to the wedding, Señora Vega. You have every right to be there. I'll speak to my mother if necessary. Elena shook her head. You're a kind man, Rodrigo. But I won't be the reason your marriage starts with family conflict. I won't put that weight on Sophia, no matter what she's done. Then let me do something. He pulled out an envelope from his jacket. The wedding breakfast is being held in the palace gardens. The main ceremony is formal, restricted, but afterward there's a reception. Take this invitation. You don't have to announce yourself, just be there. See your daughter on the happiest day of her life. You deserve that much. Elena stared at the cream-colored envelope, embossed with gold lettering. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Why are you doing this? Because I lost my father 2 years ago, Rodrigo said softly, and if he were alive, I'd want him at my wedding, no matter what anyone else thought. Family isn't something to be ashamed of, Señora Vega. It's everything. The wedding day arrived with cruel perfection. The sky was a deep, crystalline blue, the kind of autumn day that made Madrid look like a painting. Elena had barely slept, the invitation lying on her small wooden table like an accusation, like a promise, like a question she couldn't answer. She rose before dawn in her room in Lavapiés, where clotheslines crisscrossed between buildings and children's laughter echoed through narrow streets. Her neighbors were good people, washerwomen, laborers, shopkeepers. They'd celebrated when Sophia secured her engagement to Rodrigo, unaware of the shame that celebration would later inspire in the bride-to-be. Elena bathed with cold water from the basin, then dressed in her blue cotton dress. It was simple, clean, carefully mended. She'd pressed it the night before, her hands shaking slightly. The hat with its silk flower perched awkwardly on her graying hair, and she almost laughed at her reflection. Who was she fooling? But Rodrigo's words echoed in her mind. You deserve to see your daughter on the happiest day of her life. Did she? Or was this simply another form of sacrifice, forcing herself to witness her own erasure? The walk to the royal palace took nearly an hour. Elena moved through streets she knew intimately, each corner holding memories of Sophia's childhood. The bakery, where they'd shared sweet rolls on Sundays. The fountain where Sophia had made wishes, her small face scrunched in concentration. The church, where they'd lit candles for her father's soul. As she approached the palace gardens, the world transformed. Suddenly, she was surrounded by carriages that cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime, by women in silk and jewels, by men in mourning coats, with gold watch chains gleaming across their waists. The palace itself rose before her like a golden mountain, baroque and impossibly grand, its facade glowing in the afternoon sun. Guards in formal uniforms flanked the gates, checking invitations with military precision. Elena's hands trembled as she presented hers. The guard's eyes flickered over her simple dress, her worn shoes, her calloused hands. For a terrible moment, she thought he would turn her away. But the invitation was genuine, and after a long pause, he stepped aside. The gardens were like stepping into a fever dream. Precisely manicured hedges formed geometric patterns. Fountains sent crystal water arcing into the air, catching the sunlight in 1,000 tiny rainbows. White roses, her specialty, adorned every table, every column. The irony wasn't lost on her. Somewhere, someone had bought roses for this wedding, perhaps even from her without knowing the connection. Elena stayed at the edges near a hedge of boxwood, partially concealed. From there she could see everything without being seen. The ceremony had already concluded, the actual vows exchanged inside the palace chapel, restricted to immediate family and the closest aristocratic circles. Now the guests gathered for the reception, a sea of elegant hats and elaborate gowns, of laughter that sounded like crystal chiming. And then she saw Sophia Letters, her daughter, stood near the central fountain, resplendent in a wedding gown of white silk and French lace. The dress must have cost a fortune. The bodice was covered in tiny pearls, the train so long it required 2 attendants to manage it. Sophia's dark hair was styled in elaborate Gibson girl waves, adorned with orange blossoms and a delicate tiara. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. She looked nothing like the little girl who used to sleep with her head on Elena's lap, who used to braid stems of lavender, who used to say, "I love you, Mama," in that sweet, lisping voice. Rodrigo stood beside her, handsome and attentive, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. Together, they greeted an endless line of guests, counts and countesses, diplomats, judges, members of parliament. Sophia's laugh rang out, bright and false, as she air-kissed women who looked down their noses at everyone around them. Elena's heart contracted painfully. This was what she'd worked for, wasn't it? This success, this elevation, this escape from the poverty that had marked Elena's own life. So why did it feel like a funeral? "Sophia, darling, you look absolutely radiant." Donna Isabel Alcantara appeared like a ship in full sail, her purple gown sweeping across the manicured grass. Rodrigo's mother was everything Sophia had described, imperious, elegant, with eyes like chips of grey ice. She took Sophia's hand with the possessive pride of someone claiming a prized acquisition. The wedding was perfect, simply perfect. "You've made our family very happy." "Thank you, Donna." Isabel Sophia's voice was breathless, eager to please. "I'm so honored to be part of the Alcantara family." "Yes, well." Isabel's smile was thin. "Your background is uncontagious. But Rodrigo assures me you come from respectable people. Your father was a teacher, wasn't he, before his untimely passing?" Elena's breath caught. "A teacher?" She almost laughed. Francisco had been a carpenter, a good man with skilled hands and a gentle soul who died in a construction accident, crushed under falling timber. There was no shame in it. But apparently, Being a carpenter's daughter wasn't quite good enough for the Alcantaras. Yes, Sophia said, the lie slipping easily from her lips. He taught literature at a private academy. How refined. And your mother, I understand she passed away as well. The world tilted. Elena gripped the hedge beside her, thorns biting into her palm. Yes, Sophia whispered, and Elena saw her daughter's throat work, saw the way her eyes flickered with something that might have been guilt. When I was quite young, I was raised by my aunt afterward, dead. She'd killed her. It wasn't enough to hide her, to deny her, to erase her. Sophia had actually killed her off, buried her in a fiction so complete that Elena Vega no longer existed. How tragic for you, Isabel said with the kind of sympathy that wasn't really sympathy at all, but you've overcome so much. That shows strength of character. The Alcantara family values resilience. They moved on, and Elena stood frozen, feeling as though she'd been stabbed. Around her the party continued, waiters in pristine white gloves serving champagne in crystal flutes. A string quartet playing Mozart, the scent of expensive perfume mixing with the roses. Dead. She was dead. Elena turned to leave, her visions swimming. She'd been a fool to come. Rodrigo had meant well, but this was worse than absence. This was witnessing her own annihilation. She'd made it halfway to the garden gate when she heard the voice. "Excuse me, Signora. You're there, by the hedge." Elena turned. A woman in an elaborate emerald gown was approaching, her face curious and slightly suspicious. She was one of the wedding guests, someone important, judging by the way others deferred to her. "Yes?" Elena's voice came out rough. "I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm Marchesa de Velasco." "And you are?" Elena's mind went blank. She should have prepared for this, should have had an answer ready. I'm just leaving. I'm sorry for the intrusion." "Intrusion?" The Marchesa's eyes sharpened. "You have an invitation, don't you? Otherwise the guards would never have admitted you." "Yes, but Then why are you skulking in the bushes like a criminal?" The woman's voice had risen slightly, drawing attention. Several other guests turned to look. "Who invited you?" Elena's throat closed. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. The world was narrowing to a tunnel, all eyes suddenly upon her. "Mother?" The word was barely a breath, but in the sudden quiet, it carried like a shout. Sophia stood 20 feet away, her face drained of all color, her elaborate gown suddenly seeming like a costume that no longer fit. Her eyes were wide, locked on Elena with an expression of absolute horror. "Mother," the Marchesa repeated, confused. "But I thought your mother was—" "She is," Sophia said quickly, desperately. "I mean, this woman is confused. I don't know who she is." Elena felt something break inside her chest. It was a clean break, sharp and final, like a bone snapping. 24 years of sacrifice, 24 years of love, and her daughter couldn't even acknowledge her existence. "Sophia," Elena said quietly. Just her name, nothing else. There was nothing else to say. "I don't know you," Sophia repeated, louder now, her voice shaking. "Security. There's been some kind of mistake. This woman shouldn't be here." Guards were approaching now, their hands already reaching for Elena's arms. The entire garden had fallen silent. All those aristocratic faces turned toward the spectacle. Rodrigo was pushing through the crowd, his face stricken, but he was too far away. Elena didn't resist as they took her arms. She just looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing Sophia's face. "It's all right," Elena said softly, to the guards, to no one, to everyone. "I'm leaving." As they escorted her toward the gate, She heard the whispers start, like wind through dry leaves. She heard Donna Isabel's sharp voice, demanding explanations. She heard Sophia's high, false laugh, trying to cover the moment with noise. She didn't look back. The walk home to Lavapiés felt like walking through water. Everything was muffled, distant. Her neighbors were sitting outside their doors, taking advantage of the warm evening, but Alina passed them without seeing, without speaking. She climbed the narrow stairs to her room, unlocked the door with shaking hands, and finally, allowed herself to cry. She cried for the little girl who used to bring her wildflowers picked from the park. She cried for the teenager who dreamed aloud of wearing beautiful gowns someday. She cried for the woman she'd raised, who had become someone Alina didn't recognize. And she cried for herself, for the fool who'd believed that love alone could be enough. That sacrifice would be rewarded, that her daughter would always be her daughter, no matter how high she climbed. When the tears finally stopped, darkness had fallen. Madrid sparkled outside her window, a city of golden lights and shadowed secrets. Alina sat at her small table and did what she always did when the world became too much. She planned for tomorrow. She'd wake at dawn. She'd go to Plaza Mayor and buy fresh flowers from the wholesalers. She'd set up a stand in Puerta del Sol, and she'd work, because work was what she knew, what she'd always known. The wedding was over. Her daughter was married, and Alina Vega was, in all the ways that mattered, dead. She was almost at peace with that thought when the pounding started on her door. 3 weeks later, and the pounding came again. This time, it wasn't at her door, but at her heart, a constant, anxious rhythm that had become her unwelcome companion. It was a Tuesday morning, cold enough that Elena's breath clouded as she arranged her flowers in Puerta del Sol. November had arrived with bitter winds that swept down from the Guadarrama mountains, and despite her woolen shawl, she couldn't seem to get warm. The chill seemed to come from inside her, from the hollow place where her daughter used to live. She'd seen Sophia only once since the wedding, from a distance. Her daughter had been in a hired carriage on Calle Mayor, her profile visible through the window, her expression pinched and worried. The carriage had passed within 10 feet of where Alina stood with her flowers, but Sophia had looked straight ahead, unseeing, or perhaps choosing not to see. Senora Vega. Alina looked up from the roses she was arranging. A young man in a courier's uniform stood before her, holding an envelope with a red wax seal. "A delivery for you. I need your signature." Elena's hands trembled as she signed the receipt. The envelope was heavy, expansive paper that spoke of lawyers and banks and things beyond her world. She tucked it into her apron, trying to ignore the way her pulse had quickened. It wasn't until her lunch break, sitting on a bench in Plaza Mayor with a piece of bread and cheese, that she finally opened it. The letterhead read, Valdez y Asociados, Abogados. The letter itself was informal Spanish, dense with legal terminology, but the numbers at the bottom were clear enough. Elena's vision blurred, and she had to read them 3 times to believe what she was seeing. Wedding expenses, $500,000. $500,000. The amount was incomprehensible. It was more money than Alina would earn in 10 lifetimes, more than most people in Lavapiés would see in 100. Her hands shook as she read the details. The palace garden is rental. The flowers are. The bitter irony, $20,000 worth of imported roses and orchids. The catering, the champagne, the orchestra, the bride's gown, the invitations, the photographer. Line after line of expenses that had been authorized by Sofia Vega Alcantara. under the assumption that the Alcantara family would cover the costs. But they hadn't. A second letter was attached, this one shorter, on different paper. Elena recognized the aggressive scrawl of an angry man. Senorita Vega. It began, not Signora Alcantara. Elena noted. Your deception regarding your family background has come to light. The Alcantara family will not be responsible for debts incurred under false pretenses. As you authorize these expenses, they are your responsibility. Payment is expected within 30 days, or legal action will be pursued. Miguel Valdez, attorney at law, representing the Alcantara family trust. Elena sat motionless as Madrid moved around her. Pigeons pecked at crumbs near her feet. A street musician played a guitar somewhere nearby. The world continued, indifferent to the paper bomb that had just exploded in her hands. They'd abandoned her. Sofia had lied about her background. The Alcantaras had discovered the truth, and now they were leaving her daughter to drown in the consequences. And Sofia, with nowhere else to turn, would come to her. Elena knew it as certainly as she knew the sun would rise tomorrow. Sure enough, as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, as Elena was packing up her unsold flowers, she saw a figure approaching across the square. Even from a distance, even in the fading light, she recognized the walk. A mother always knows her child. Sofia wore a dark cloak with the hood pulled up, trying for anonymity, but her expensive boots gave her away. She moved with the hesitant steps of someone approaching a house where they're no longer welcome. "Mother," she said, stopping several feet away. Close enough to speak, far enough to flee. Elena continued wrapping her flowers in paper, her movements precise and controlled. "Sofia letters. I received a letter today. From the lawyers." Sofia's voice was small, stripped of the false brightness it had held at the wedding. "They're demanding payment for the wedding expenses. $500,000, yes. I received the same letter. Mother, I don't have that kind of money. Rodriguez's family has cut him off. They've frozen his trust fund until he agrees to annul the marriage. They're saying I committed fraud, that I tricked him into marrying me under false pretenses." Sofia's voice cracked. "I have nowhere to go. They've locked me out of the palace apartment. All my things are in the street. I can't go to any of my friends. They are all from Rodrigo Circo. And now they're all saying I'm a liar and a social climber, and—" She broke off, choking on a sob. Elena tied off the last bundle of flowers and finally looked at her daughter. Really looked at her. Sofia's face was blotchy from crying, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. The beautiful gown was gone, replaced by a simple dress that would have been elegant a month ago, but now looked like a costume from a play that had ended badly. "So you've come to me," Elena said flatly. "You're my mother. You're the only one." Who Sofia stepped closer, reaching out. "Please. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I'm begging you. I need help. I need somewhere to stay, and I need money. If you could just loan me something to start paying off the debt, to show the lawyers I'm serious, then maybe—" "No." The word hung in the air between them like a stone dropped into still water. Sofia blinked. "What?" "No," Elena repeated. She picked up her basket of flowers, balanced it on her hip, the way she'd done for 30 years. "I won't help you, but you're my mother, am I?" Elena's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it now. "Because 3 weeks ago, in front of 200 people, you told everyone I was dead. You erased me, Sofia Letters, not just from the wedding, not just from your new life. You killed me. So tell me, how can a dead woman help you?" Sophia's face crumpled. I was scared. I was stupid and scared, and you were ashamed. Elena stepped closer now, and Sophia flinched as though from a blow. You were ashamed of the woman who raised you. Ashamed of the hands that worked until they bled to pay for your education. Ashamed of the mother who sold her own mother's wedding ring so you could have piano lessons, so you could speak French, so you could be good enough for people like the Alcantaras. Mother, please, do you know what I thought, watching you at that wedding? Elena continued, her voice soft but relentless. I thought about the night your father died. You were 6 years old. You cried for 3 days straight, wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. And I held you through all of it, even though I was crying too, even though I had no idea how I was going to survive, how I was going to feed us both. But I never let you see my fear. I let you believe everything would be all right, because you were my daughter, and protecting you was more important than my own pain. Sophia was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't want your apology, Elena said. I want you to understand what you threw away. I want you to understand that dignity isn't about where you come from or how much money you have. It's about honoring the people who loved you, who sacrificed for you. And you threw that away for what? A fancy wedding? A title? The approval of people who abandoned you the moment they learned the truth. I know I was wrong. Please, Mother, if you could just... I have $600, Elena said. That's what I've saved in 30 years of selling flowers. $600. It's in a tin under my bed. It was meant to be my retirement, for when I'm too old to work. But I was willing to give it to you once. Do you know why? Sophia shook her head mutely. Because I'm your mother, and that's what mothers do. We give everything, even when it costs us our future. Elena's eyes were dry, but her voice carried the weight of every unshed tear. But you're not asking me to give to my daughter. You're asking me to give to a stranger, to someone who denied me, who erased me, who was willing to let me stand in the cold while she danced in silk and jewels. I'll do anything, Sophia whispered. I'll make it right. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll work, I'll pay you back every cent, It's too late for that. Elena adjusted her flower basket. The truth is already out, isn't it? That's why the Alcantaras abandoned you. And as for working... She gestured to her own calloused hands. You've spent your whole life trying to escape work like mine. You think you could do it. Wake up at dawn, stand on cobblestones for 12 hours, smile at people who look through you like you're invisible. You wanted to escape the poverty I lived in. Well, now you can see what that poverty really meant. It meant dignity. It meant honesty. It meant keeping your word and honoring your family. You traded all of that for a lie, and now the lie has cost you everything. Elena started to walk away, then paused and turned back. There's a boarding house on Calle Toledo. They rent rooms by the week. It's not much, but it's clean. If you're serious about starting over, about being honest, you can start there. Get a job, any job. Save your money. Pay your debts slowly, honorably. And maybe, someday, when you've learned what it really means to work, to struggle, to survive without pretending to be something you're not, maybe then we can talk. Maybe then you'll be my daughter again, Mother. But until then, Sophia, you're on your own, just like you wanted to be. Elena walked away across the darkening square, her flower basket on her hip, her back straight, despite the weight of everything she carried. Behind her, she heard Sophia crying, calling her name, but she didn't turn around. She couldn't. If she turned around, if she saw her daughter's face, she might break. She might give in. And that wouldn't help anyone. Sometimes, love meant letting go. Sometimes it meant letting the person you loved most face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes the kindest thing a mother could do was say no. The streets of Lavapiés welcomed her home. Her neighbors nodded, greeting Maria the washerwoman, old Jose the knife sharpener, the Romero family with their 6 children spilling out of a 2-room apartment. These were her people. They weren't ashamed of their work, of their calloused hands, of their simple clothes. They understood that dignity came from how you lived, not from how others perceived you. Elena climbed to her room and placed her flower basket by the door. The tin box was still under her bed, holding her $600, her retirement, her future. She left it where it was. That night, she didn't cry. She'd done her crying 3 weeks ago, at the wedding. Tonight, she simply sat by her window and looked out of Madrid, at the lamplights glowing like small stars, at the shadows between buildings, at the city that had been her home, her workplace, her entire world for more than half a century. Somewhere out there, her daughter was learning a hard lesson. Somewhere, Sofia was discovering that the life Elena had lived wasn't something to be ashamed of, but something to be honored. And perhaps, if she was lucky, if she was willing to do the work, Sofia would find her way back. Not to the easy life she'd imagined, not to palaces and titles and silk gowns, but to something more valuable: truth, dignity, and the knowledge that she was Elena Vega's daughter. And that was enough. It would have to be enough, because it was all that was left. 3 months passed like water through cupped hands, quick, cold, leaving only traces behind. Elena's life returned to its familiar rhythm. She woke before dawn, walked to Plaza Mayor for fresh flowers, set up her stand in Puerta del Sol, and worked until the light faded. Winter arrived in earnest, bringing winds that cut through her woolen shawls and mornings when frost painted the cobblestones silver. Her hands grew even more weathered, the lines in her palms deepening like rivers carved into ancient stone. She heard nothing from Sofia. Letters, no word, through neighbors or mutual acquaintances. It was as if her daughter had vanished into the vast anonymity of Madrid, swallowed by the city that had once promised her so much. Elena told herself she didn't care. She told herself she'd made peace with the loss, that she'd cut the cord cleanly, and it was better this way. But late at night, when the room was dark and the sounds of Lavapiés had quieted to occasional footsteps and distant laughter, she still wondered. Was Sofia safe? Was she eating? Had she found work, or had pride and inexperience left her destitute? A mother never truly stops being a mother, even when she wants to. It was a grey February morning when Elena saw her again. She was arranging carnations at her stand when she noticed a figure across the square. At first she didn't recognize her. The woman was thin, her clothes plain and worn, her hair pulled back in a simple braid, rather than the elaborate style Sofia had favored. She carried a basket on her arm, and she was speaking with Don Alberto, the newspaper vendor. Elena's hands stilled on the flowers. Sofia was selling newspapers. Elena watched, unable to look away, as her daughter moved from person to person with the tentative determination of someone new to street vending. Her technique was clumsy. She held the papers awkwardly. Her voice was too quiet. She flinched when people brushed past her without buying, but she was doing it. She was working. Their eyes met across the square. For a moment neither moved. Then Sofia set down her basket and crossed the cobblestones, moving with none of her former grace. She stopped a respectful distance from Elena's flower stand. "Hello, Mother." Elena took in the changes. Sofia's hands were red from cold, her fingernails broken. There were shadows under her eyes, and her cheekbones stood out more sharply than before. But there was something else too, something in the set of her shoulders, the directness of her gaze that hadn't been there before. Violetas, I'm not here to ask for money, Sophia said quickly. I want you to know that first. I'm here because I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the truth. Elena said nothing, waiting. After you turned me away, I slept in the street for 3 nights. I was too proud to go to the boarding house you suggested. I thought I could figure something out on my own. But nobody would help me. My friends, the people I thought cared about me, they all closed their doors. Some literally, when they saw me coming. Sophia's voice was steady, but Elena could hear the tremor beneath. On the 3rd night, a woman found me sleeping in a doorway. She was a laundress, about your age. She took me to her home, gave me soup, let me sleep on her floor. I didn't even know her name, but she helped me. Why are you telling me this? Because she reminded me of you, Sophia said simply. She worked with her hands. She was poor. And she was kinder than anyone I'd met in Rodrigo's world. She didn't care about my story, about the scandal, about any of it. She just saw someone who needed help. Sophia took a shaky breath. Her name was Carmen. She's the one who told me Don Alberto was looking for someone to help sell newspapers. She's the one who lent me money for my first week's rent at the boarding house. And when I tried to thank her, she said something I'll never forget. What did she say? She said, "This is what working people do. We help each other because we're all we have." Sophia's eyes glistened, and I realized that's what you'd been trying to teach me my whole life. That's what I threw away when I was ashamed of you. Elena felt her throat tighten, but she kept her voice level. Words are easy, Sophialetas. They cost nothing, I know. That's why I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. Sophia straightened her shoulders. I'm here to tell you that I'm paying my debts. All of them. Don Alberto pays me $6 a week. I found work at night too, sewing in a textile factory. Another $4. I'm living in the boarding house you suggested, paying $2 a week for a room the size of a closet. Every spare cent goes to the lawyers to pay down the wedding debt. That will take you decades, Elena said quietly. I know. 50 years, if I'm lucky, and if I can keep working. Sophia's laugh was bitter but genuine. The lawyers agreed to a payment plan after I showed them my situation. $5 a month. It's barely more than the interest, but it's all I can manage. And it's honest. Elena looked at her. Daughter really looked at her. The expensive wedding gown was long gone, replaced by a simple cotton dress that had been mended more than once. Her hands, once soft and carefully manicured for piano playing, were now rough and marked by work. She looked, Elena thought, with a sharp pang, like herself, like a working woman, like someone who understood, finally, the price of dignity. Why are you telling me this? Elena asked again. Because I want you to know that I'm trying to be worthy of being your daughter again. Sophia's voice cracked. I may never pay off that debt. I may spend the rest of my life selling newspapers and sewing seams. But every day I work, every dollar I earn, honestly, I think about you, about everything you did for me. And I understand now, Mother. I understand what I had, what I lost, and what really matters. Across the square, Don Alberto called out Sophia. Fresh papers just arrived. I have to go, Sophia said. But I wanted you to know. You were right about everything. About dignity, about honest work, about what it means to have nothing and build something anyway. You were right, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. She turned to leave, and Elena felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But something softer than the hardness she'd been carrying. Sophia Letters. Her daughter stopped, turned back. Your basket, Elena said, gesturing to the newspaper basket. The way you're carrying it will hurt your shoulder by midday. Shift the weight to your hip like this, she remonstrated with her own flower basket. And when someone walks past without buying, don't flinch. Look them in the eye and smile anyway. They'll remember you next time. Sophia's eyes widened, then filled with tears. Thank you, Mother. I'm not doing this for you, Elena said, but her voice was gentler now. I'm doing it because no one should have to learn this work the hard way if someone can teach them. That's what working people do. We help each other, Sophia smiled, a real smile. Not the false, bright thing from the wedding, but something small and genuine and grateful. We help each other because we're all we have. Go on. Don Alberto is waiting. Elena watched her daughter hurry back across the square, adjusting her basket the way Elena had shown her. And for the first time in months, Elena felt something that might have been hope. The seasons turned. Winter yielded to spring, and Madrid bloomed with jasmine and honeysuckle. Elena's stand flourished with roses and carnations and sweet-smelling herbs. And across Puerta del Sol, Sophia sold her newspapers day after day, rain or shine. They didn't speak often. Sometimes days would pass with nothing more than a nod of greeting across the square. But Elena watched. She watched as her daughter learned the rhythm of street vending, as her voice grew stronger, calling out headlines, as her hands grew calloused and capable. She watched as Sophia made friends among the other vendors, sharing lunch with the chestnut roaster, laughing with the woman who sold ribbons, helping the old shoeshine man when his back gave him trouble. She watched, and sometimes, when Sophia caught her looking, they'd share a small smile, nothing more. But it was enough. One morning in late April, as cherry blossoms drifted across the cobblestones like pink snow, Elena was surprised to see Rodrigo Alcantara approaching her flower stand. He looked thinner than she remembered, his elegant clothes slightly worn, the confidence in his bearing replaced by something more uncertain. Signora Vega. He removed his hat. May I speak with you? Elena's hands didn't stop arranging flowers. If you've come to threaten more legal action, no, nothing like that. He glanced across the square to where Sophia was setting up her newspaper stand. I came to apologize. And to tell you something you deserve to know. Elena finally looked at him. Go on. I've been fighting with my family for months. About Sophia, about the wedding, about everything. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him look younger, more vulnerable. They wanted me to annul the marriage, to pretend it never happened. They said she'd deceived me, that she wasn't worthy of the Alcantara name. She did deceive you, Elena said bluntly. She lied about who she was, where she came from. You have every right to be angry. I was angry, for a while. Rodrigo looked down at his hat, turning it in his hands. But then I started thinking about why she lied, not to excuse it, but to understand it. And I realized that everything she told me about herself, her kindness, her intelligence, her dreams, all of that was true. The only lie was about her background, about you, and that lie cost you your inheritance. Yes, my mother cut me off completely when I refused the annulment. I'm living in a small apartment, working as a clerk in a law office. He smiled ruefully. It turns out I'm not very useful without the family name and money. But I'm learning. Elena studied him. Why are you telling me this? Because I love your daughter, Rodrigo said simply. Not the version she pretended to be. The real Sophia Letters. The one who's selling newspapers across this square right now. The one who's working 3 jobs to pay off a debt that would crush most people. The one who talks about her mother with such regret and respect that I know exactly where she learned to be strong. Elena's hands stilled on the flowers. I've been watching her too, Rodrigo continued. Not following her, I stay away, because I don't want to complicate her life more than I already have. But I see her. I see how hard she works, how she's changed, and I see how she looks at you and she thinks no one's watching. He paused. She's dying for your forgiveness, Señora Vega. She's too proud to beg for it, too ashamed to ask again. But she's doing everything she can to earn it. Forgiveness isn't earned, Elena said quietly. It's given. And I'm not sure I'm ready to give it. I understand. But I wanted you to know something else. Rodrigo reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This arrived at my office yesterday. It's addressed to you. Elena took the envelope with trembling hands. The return address was from Valdez Wire Asociados, the lawyers handling the wedding debt. Inside was a single sheet of paper. She read it once, twice, 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. It's a receipt, Rodrigo said softly. The wedding debt has been paid in full. But that's impossible. Sofia doesn't have this kind of money. Even with her jobs, it would take her 50 years. I know. Rodrigo's smile was gentle. She doesn't know I did this. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell her. Let her keep making her payments. Let her keep working. But I couldn't let that debt destroy her life. Not when the wedding was supposed to be a celebration of our love, not a punishment for her fear. Elena's vision blurred. You paid it, all of it. I sold my mother's gift to me, a painting that had been in the family for generations. It was mine to do with as I wished, and I wished for Sofia to be free. He put his hat back on. She's free now. She just doesn't know it yet. Why? Elena asked. After everything, the lies, the scandal, the separation, why would you do this? Because she's your daughter, Rodrigo said simply. And you raised her to be someone worth loving, even when she forgot it herself. The least I could do was give her a chance to remember. He started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Señora Vega, when you do decide to forgive her, and I think you will, when you're ready, could you tell her something for me? What? That I'll be waiting. Not in a palace, not with money or titles, or any of the things she thought she wanted. Just me, in my small apartment, with a clerk's salary and a future that's uncertain but honest. His smile was sad but hopeful. Tell her I'll be waiting for the real Sofia Letters, the one who's strong enough to sell newspapers in the rain, the one who's brave enough to face her mistakes, the one who's her mother's daughter. He tipped his hat and disappeared into the morning crowd. Elena stood motionless, the receipt in her hands, her mind spinning. Across the square, Sofia was laughing at something Don Alberto had said, her face lit with genuine joy despite the hardness of her life. She looked, Elena thought, more beautiful than she had on her wedding day. Not because of silk and jewels, but because the beauty came from within now. From strength, from resilience, from the earned pride of honest work. Elena folded the receipt carefully and tucked it into her apron pocket. She would tell Sofia eventually, but not yet. Let her daughter keep working, keep building her character on the foundation of labor and sacrifice. Let her learn what Elena had always known, that dignity wasn't about being above work, but about doing work with honor. But tonight, Elena decided. She would make Sofia's favorite meal, the simple stew they used to share when Sofia was young, before dreams of palaces and aristocracy had complicated everything. She would invite her daughter home. Not to forgive, not yet, but to begin the slow work of rebuilding what had been broken. Because that's what working people did. They built things. They fixed things. They took what was broken and made it whole again, not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through small acts of daily love, repeated until the broken places healed. As the sun climbed higher over Puerta del Sol, Elena returned to her flowers. She had roses to sell, customers to greet, a life to live, and now, perhaps, she had a daughter to reclaim, one day at a time, one flower, one conversation, one shared meal at a time. The story wasn't over yet. It was just beginning again, in a different way, a truer way, a way that honored both the mother who had given everything and the daughter who had finally learnt what everything meant. The afternoon sun painted Puerta del Sol in shades of amber and gold. Elena was wrapping the last of her unsold flowers. She would donate them to the church, as she always did, when she felt a presence beside her stand. Sophia stood there, her newspaper basket empty, her day's work done. "Mother," she said softly, "would you, Doctor Gong, would you have dinner with me? I know a small cafe on Calle Toledo. Nothing fancy, just soup and bread. My treat, please." Elena looked at her daughter, at the hope and fear warring in her eyes, at the hands that had learnt to work, at the posture that had learnt humility, at the woman who had finally learned the value of what she'd been given all along. "I have a better idea," Elena said. "Come home with me. I'll make your father's stew. The way I used to make it when you were small." Sophia Less's face crumpled. "You'd do that? After everything, you're still my daughter," Elena said. "I'm not saying I've forgiven you. I'm not saying everything is fixed. But we have to start somewhere. And we start with a meal. We start with coming home." "Oh, Mother," Sophia's voice broke. No one deserves anything," Elena interrupted gently. "We're not given what we deserve. We're given what we're given, and we decide what to do with it. You were given advantages, and you squandered them. Now you've been given hardship, and you're meeting it with strength. That's worth something. That's worth building on." They walked together through the winding streets of Madrid as the city settled into evening, past the grand boulevards where Sophia had once dreamed of living, through the modest neighborhoods where real life happened, to the narrow streets of Lavapiés where Elena had always made her home. In Elena's small room, they worked side by side. Elena showed Sophia how to chop the vegetables, how to season the meat, how to let the stew simmer slowly so all the flavors could meld together. They worked mostly in silence, but it was a companionable silence now, not the painful void that had separated them. As night fell over Madrid, they sat together at the small wooden table. The stew steamed between them, filling the room with the scent of home, of memory, of simpler times. "I used to dream about leaving this neighborhood," Sophia said quietly, stirring her stew. "I thought it meant I was poor if I stayed here. I thought dignity meant silk dresses and palace gardens." "And now?" Elena asked. "Now I think dignity means this." Sophia gestured around the small, clean room. "A home you earned, food you can afford, work that tires you but doesn't shame you." She looked up at her mother. "Now I think dignity means being able to look your mother in the eye. Can you look me in the eye, Sophia?" Sophia met her mother's gaze directly. "I'm trying to learn how. Every day I'm trying." Elena reached across the table and took her daughter's rough, work-worn hands in her own. 2 sets of calloused palms, 2 sets of broken nails, 2 sets of hands that knew the weight of honest labor. "Then that's enough," Elena said. "For now, that's enough." They ate together as the sounds of lavapes drifted through the window, children playing, neighbors calling to each other, the distant melody of someone's guitar. The sounds of real life, of community, of people who understood that wealth wasn't measured in gold, but in connection, in honesty, in the willingness to help each other through hard times. "There's something I need to tell you," Elena said as they finished their meal. She pulled the receipt from her apron pocket and placed it on the table between them. "This arrived today." Sophia picked it up, her eyes widening as she read. "But this says ... It says the debt is paid in full." "That's impossible. I have only managed to pay off $500. That's still..." She did the math in her head, her face going pale. "There's still $499,500 remaining. This has to be a mistake." "It's not a mistake. But I don't understand." "Who would?" Sophia's eyes widened further. "Rodrigo. He did this, didn't he?" Elena nodded. "He came to see me this morning. He sold a family painting to pay your debt. He wanted you to be free." Sophia sat back, the receipt trembling in her hands. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't try to hide them. "He did that for me? After I lied to him, after I brought scandal to his family, after I cost him his inheritance, he still did that." "He loves you," Elena said simply. "The real you. Not the version you pretended to be, but the woman you're becoming. The woman who's strong enough to face her mistakes and work to make them right. I have to see him. I have to thank him. I have to. You have to finish becoming the person he believed you could be," Elena interrupted gently. "He didn't pay that debt so you'd come running back. He paid it so you'd be free to keep growing, to keep learning, to keep becoming yourself. Don't waste that gift by rushing back before you're ready." Sophia wiped her eyes. "What should I do?" "Keep working," Elena said. "Keep making your payments, even though the debt is gone. Save the money this time. Build something for yourself. And when you're ready, when you really know who you are, not who you want to be or who you think you should be, but who you actually are, then go to him. Go to him as an equal, not as someone he rescued. Go to him as yourself. How will I know when I'm ready?" Elena smiled. "You'll know. The same way you knew to come here tonight. The same way you knew to start working instead of begging. You'll know." They cleaned up together, washing the dishes in Elena's small basin, drying them with worn towels, putting them away in their proper places. Simple domestic tasks that once Sophia would have scorned, that now she performed with quiet competence. At the door, Sophia turned back. "Mother? Can I come again? For dinner, I mean. Not every night, I don't want to impose, but maybe once a week." "Once a week," Elena agreed. "And Sophia? Bring your wedding photograph next time. The one from the ceremony. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see how beautiful you looked, even if I couldn't be there to see it in person." Sophia's voice was choked. "I'll bring it. And Mother, thank you. For the meal. For the advice. For not giving up on me even when I gave up on myself." "I'm your mother," Elena said. "That's what mothers do. We never give up. We just wait for our children to find their way home." After Sophia left, Elena sat by her window and looked out at Madrid. The city glittered with lamplight, ancient and ever-changing, full of stories of people who rose and fell, who lost and found themselves, who learned hard lessons and became better for it. Somewhere out there, her daughter was walking through those streets, carrying the weight of wisdom earned through suffering, the gift of a second chance, the knowledge that she was loved despite her failures. Somewhere, Rodrigo was waiting in his small apartment, hoping that the woman he'd married would find her way back to him, better and stronger than before. And somewhere, in her lawyer's office, a receipt marked "paid in full" represented not an ending, but a beginning. Elena pulled out her tin box from under the bed. $600, carefully saved over 3 decades. She'd kept it for her retirement, for the day when she could no longer stand in Puerto del Sol selling flowers. But looking at it now, she had a different idea. Tomorrow she'd go to the bank. She'd open a savings account, not for herself, but for Sofia and Rodrigo. A wedding gift, finally given. Not enough to make them rich, but enough to help them start over. Enough to rent a modest apartment, to buy furniture, to begin building a life based on honesty instead of pretense. She'd give it to them when Sofia was ready. When her daughter had finished learning the lessons that only poverty and hard work could teach, and maybe, if she was very lucky, she'd live to see grandchildren. Children who would be taught the value of work, who would understand that dignity came from character rather than circumstance, who would never be ashamed of the grandmother who sold flowers in Puerto del Sol. The church bells rang 10 times, marking the late hour. Elena prepared for bed, her heart lighter than it had been in months. The wound wasn't healed, not yet, but it was healing. Slowly, painfully, honestly. The way all real healing happened. Tomorrow she'd wake at dawn. She'd go to Plaza Mayor for fresh flowers. She'd set up her stand in Puerto del Sol and work through the day, her hands moving through the familiar motions that had sustained her for so long. And, across the square, Sofia would sell her newspapers, learning with every transaction what Elena had always known, that there was no shame in honest work, no disgrace in humble origins, no dishonor in being exactly who you were. They would build their relationship back, one day at a time. One flower, one newspaper, one shared meal at a time. It wouldn't be easy. The hurt ran deep. The betrayal still stung. But they were both working people now, and working people understood that anything worth having required effort, patience, and time. The debt was paid, the lessons were learned, and the real work, the work of forgiveness, of rebuilding trust, of becoming family again, could finally begin. Outside, Madrid slept and dreamed under a blanket of stars. And in a small room in Lavapiés, Elena Vega closed her eyes and dreamed too. She dreamed of her daughter's wedding, but this time she was there, standing proudly in her simple dress as Sofia spoke her vows. She dreamed of her husband Francisco, telling her she'd done well, that their daughter would be fine. She dreamed of flowers blooming in impossible places, of roots growing deep and strong, of beauty that came not from pretense, but from truth. And when she awoke the next morning, ready to face another day